Oh, hi. I did not see you. A future where overfishing causes fish populations to disappear, along with human trade and economies, is already becoming a fast reality. It affects everyone from our backyard to the big outer world.
It is amazing that we did that.
Did we actually get this fish?
What? A piece of floss.
Alright, okay, move. We gotta get this thing out. Quick.
And
goodbye. According to the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, the following data presented shows just how drastic the effects of overfishing have become. 52% of fish stocks are fully exploited, 20% are moderately exploited, 17% are exploited, and 7% are depleted, and only 1% is recovering from depletion. According to many leading biologists and ecologists, if overfishing continues, we risk losing valuable food sources and, in addition to losing social and economic values, entire ecosystems will be thrown out of balance. Some fish species are experiencing population loss due to increased commercial and recreational interests. According to the World Wildlife Federation, the global fishing fleet is 2 to 3 times larger than what oceans can sustainably support. Unless the current situation improves, stocks of all species currently fished for food are predicted to collapse by 2048. When the fish is no longer sustainable, its impact is great. Fish that were once abundant are no longer so, leading to job loss and economic difficulties. In Maryland, the blue crab is a popular catch with locals. However, recent evaluations show that rebuilding the crab populations to sustainable levels may be more difficult than previously thought. Yeah.
The big reason overfishing has become such a prevalent issue is due to the lack of fishing regulations. This is especially true for Japan. Since fish is a big part of both its culture and its economy, many Japanese people are ignorant to the dangers of overfishing and hold their cultural beliefs over the environmental issues. In other countries, there are more rules and restrictions when it comes to licensing and where to fish. However, enforcement is still pretty weak no matter where you look. There are lots of regulations fishermen have to be aware of, and it's important that they abide by those rules in order to maintain an undisturbed economy and ecosystem. Hopefully, in years to come, more countries will administer better regulated fishing policies, and Japan will be able to look past its own aesthetics and become more aware of its overfishing problem and the negative consequences that could happen as a result. According to an article in The Observer, tuna is just 3.6% of the total global fish catch, but the pathetic failure of international attempts to regulate the fishing and halt its terrible decline is typical of the catastrophe facing all the overexploited fish stocks. And more than half the total global fish catch now comes from species that are fully or overexploited.
Another reason that overfishing is so prevalent is that a majority of people don't know the rules and don't think they will get caught. This clearly shows that the current way of handling overfishing is not working.
What is your experience with fishing policy?
I have a lot of experience with fishing policy. I started out in the enforcement end, enforcing fisheries laws at sea, and then moved on to the regulation side, where I participated in Marine Fishery Council hearings.
Tell me about your enforcement experience.
Well, before I got into marine law, I was a Coast Guard officer, and actually you had to patrol offshore, predominantly the Atlantic Ocean, enforcing fisheries laws. It was not pleasant, to say the least. I can remember one Christmas Eve when the seas were 8 to 10 feet, and we had to go on board a Japanese fishing vessel to make sure that they had not been overfishing stocks of squid. And the way that we do that is we go on board the fisheries vessel, or the Japanese fishing vessel, and we go into their holds, and we literally count blocks of frozen squid. Thousands of blocks of frozen squid.
The current solution today involves self-regulation, where individual fisheries set rules such as catch limits. The implementation of a global limit seems simple enough, but gradually reducing the limit to fit the trends of fish population growth is easier said than done. Additionally, rationing the amount of fish sold, bought, and eaten remains difficult for the public because of the nutritional value of fish and its easy accessibility. It seemed at the time that stocks, on which knowledge remained limited, could sustain this catch, It was thought important to agree first on the principle of a global limit, which could later be reduced as required. The experience showed that once established, such a limit was extremely difficult to revise downwards.
Our plan is to apply a government subsidy to retail sales of sustainable fish species. This way we can promote and encourage the consumption of these species so as to reduce the consumption of other less sustainable species, while still allowing the consumer the power to choose.
Subsidies can help by encouraging fishermen to pursue fishery stocks that have a better chance of sustainability for the environment. As it currently is, fishermen are driven to the short-term, quick cash fish stocks. Because of the nature of those fisheries become quickly depleted, and we see the loss of whole stocks and whole areas of fisheries in the world's oceans. So by using subsidies creatively to encourage fisheries and sustainable stocks, we have a better chance of protecting the marine ecosystem and encouraging long-term, stable fishery supplies.
As an additional measure to persuade consumers to purchase sustainable fish, penalty taxes can be applied to the sale of species deemed to be threatened or unsustainable. These pricing incentives will create both an increase in demand for sustainable fish and a decrease in demand for unsustainable species.
This plan is effective because it will not place economic sanctions on the consumer, but rather an incentive to be environmentally responsible in the form of cheaper fish. By buying the more sustainable fish, the consumer will reduce the need for unsustainable fish. A slight rise in price per license, in addition with the penalty tax on the unsustainable fish, would be more than able to provide for the government subsidies on the sustainable fish. This plan will cost comparatively little in comparison to other plans. After all, according to an article published by Harvard, the average state and wildlife agency sells 760,000 fishing licenses. A slight increase in price per license could yield large sums to be devoted to subsidies. This plan will also encourage fishermen to self-regulate, making government intervention less of a necessity and more of a safeguard. One of the greatest challenges facing our country and our world is creating sustainable fisheries for generations to come. The current rate of overfishing will lead to severe impacts in the global food supply, global workforce, and global ecology. As fish stocks disappear, consumers will start to realize how many of the products they use in their daily lives derive from fish. A combined strategy of appropriate national taxation and promoting that fishermen fight for sustainable fishing rather than bureaucrats will effectively abate the depletion of the fish population.
This is a great white shark I drew for you. And this is what happens when overfishing occurs.